Hello, everyone. My name is Stefan Sorger. This is the live session for uh, the edX Marketing Analytics course, and it's a pleasure to greet all of you to the program, and welcome. Again, my name is Stefan Sorger, and at this time, I'd like to introduce the two other people you'll be listening to today, Yulia and Jim. Yulia and Jim, would you mind introducing yourself, please?
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining our session. My name is Yulia. I am one of the course facilitators who monitors your forums and questions in the forums of the course.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jim Mukherjee, and I'm also another of the course facilitators for the course. And you might have seen some of my responses in the discussion forum. And I'm very happy that all of you are attending this course and will complete it successfully. Thank you.
So thank you, Jim, and thank you, Yulia. Thank you so much. So today, we've assembled quite a long list of questions, and thanks to all of you for producing all of your questions. Hopefully we can get through all of them. And today's theme is exotic islands. So we're going to be relating everything to exotic islands. So we'll see how that goes. Question number one, please describe step by step how to install R on a PC. What other packages are required for installing R on Mac? And what we're going to actually do this a few different ways. We're going to first start off with the Macintosh side. So I will say that R is especially effective because it incorporates both the Microsoft Windows operating system and the Apple Macintosh operating system. And I think the CRAN, the Comprehensive R Archive Network, does a terrific job in maintaining the code base almost identical for both, yet there are some subtle differences. And I believe the more that you know about the Apple Macintosh computer, for those of you who are Mac, the more you'll understand how to use R effectively. So to that end, we have our official non-endorsed Apple spokesperson, Yulia. Yulia, could you please give us a little bit of background for R, specifically as it relates to the Mac?
Thank you, Stefan. So the installing R is kind of similar to Mac and Windows. They're kind of the same. To install R, you can go to the cranrproject.org. The link is provided in the slides that are attached to the course online. So everyone is welcome to download those slides. And then once you get to the link, you can choose your operating system. In our case, we're choosing Mac right now. And so the version that's right on the link, it's only for Mac OS 10.6 or later. If you have earlier version and need earlier versions of R, you should go to their archive page and you'll be able to download it from there. If you are not sure what OS version you have, you could go to your little Mac icon in the left top corner, which is Apple, and hit about this Mac, and then little screen will pop up showing you what Mac OS you have. I currently have High Sierra, and you might have just a few versions earlier than that. Shouldn't be like much older than that. And then once you download the R package, you just install it, and it will guide you through installation. After that, you will see a little R icon pop up in your applications, in your Finder. And now, in order to install any packages and use any R packages, you will need to install an additional tool called Xquartz that used to be part of the Mac OS operating system. I believe versions earlier than 10.6. So if you have version earlier than that, you do not need this additional tool. If you have later, you do. And what Xquartz is, it is basically it is open source implementation of the X Windows system that basically system for bitmap displays common on Unix-like computer operating systems, which Apple is like. And to on that CRAN-R project page, there will be a link down below for Xquartz page as well. So you could just click on that link and then install your tool. And then after that, you should be able to work your R software just like on Windows machine, installing any packages you want and using it exactly the same way. Little hack for you to find a path name when you to copy path name. There's a kind of a trick on Mac to do that. And what you do when you go to your documents and you hit Control, while you're holding Control, you click with the mouse on your file that you want to copy a path name of, and then hit Option, and there will be option copy file as path name, and that will give you an absolute path name to your file. And I think those are all of the major differences. The rest, as I mentioned, should be just like R on Windows.
Thank you so much, Julia. So if you get 3 things out of that, let there be perhaps 3 things out. Number 1, to run R, you need OS X 10.11 or higher. 10.11 was El Capitan. Number 2, you need Xquartz. The number 1 thing you need to know about Xquartz is that it's free. To get it, you just go to xquartz.org. You pretty much, I think there's like 4 words on xquartz.org. It basically says download here. You just click the download here button and it comes up. And then the number 3 thing is you have 2 choices when it comes to entering files. You can enter them in with the full file name and path name as Julia described. Or if you set the directory, then you don't need to type all that stuff in. All you need is the file name. To do that, you just go to, on Mac, you go to MISC on the upper level menu, go to MISC, and then you say change directory, and then on change directory, you just select which folder your R files are in. Doesn't matter where you put the R files, you just need to decide on one particular folder, and then they're in there. Jim, what kind of questions are you getting with respect to R in general, or installing R in general, and installing R on Mac specifically?
Well, generally what I notice is that folks have been having difficulty just downloading, configuring R to answer the quiz questions. And in particular, I think you probably come to this question next, but in particular, they've been asking questions about particular packages, and that have to do with CA max utility and CA importance functions in R, and those are both required to actually answer the questions in the quiz. I think you're going to come to that soon.
Great, and thank you, Jim. So in order to do that, so both of those 2 functions, and this is very common in R, is that both those 2 functions are part of the package called conjoint. Is conjoint native to R? No. Conjoint is a package that you have to install, and then once you install the conjoint package, then CA max utility, the CA utils, all those are functions that are within there. How do I know which functions are in that package? You just go in a search engine, you type out R help conjoint package, and you'll get the help sheet, a document, a PDF, and that will include all of the many functions and how to use them. A big question I get a lot is I've tried to install a package, conjoint, ggplot2, whatever, and it won't work. Something's gone wrong. It says the package is not installed or that I can't install it. The number one thing to do in cases like that is to, I think we're having some video issues here. For that is to go to the R client, the R console. I'll get to that, the whole R console thing in the next question. But go to the R console and close it, exit it, and then open it again, see if that works. For some reason, and I don't know why, the R console has a tendency to get corrupted. Yola, do you ever see that, the R console getting corrupted and all of a sudden it just stops working?
Yes, it happened to me a couple times. Yes, and closing and reopening it works almost every time. The only two things that I would like to bring everyone's attention to, if you are on Mac, make sure you install Xquartz prior to installing the packages and not after. And also that functions that are in conjoint package are case sensitive. So if you are using, if you want to use CA importance function, for example, you want to make sure that you type CA and then capital I and so on to use the function, because if you type in all lowercase, you will get an error, function not found, which happened to me as well.
And that's a good point, Yulian. Thank you for bringing that up. So R is a lot like Unix in that it is case sensitive. Upper and lower case matter. If you type something in upper where it's expecting lower or vice versa, it has no idea what you're talking about. It's totally different to it. R is, it's just a robot. It just does what you tell it to do. And if you tell it to look at something that's uppercase when it's expecting lower, it doesn't know. Second thing is, yes, close out R and then reopen it, and many times magically that will work. Sometimes R becomes so corrupted that a good technique is to completely deinstall it, go to your operating system, remove all traces of R, and then reinstall everything. And all of a sudden, magically, it'll work. Why is that? I don't know. Something happens with R where especially if you have what I call a sea of red. So if you're doing an R session, then you make an error, then you make another 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 error, and it just looks like the whole page is red because of all the errors you made. R gets confused. I guess the registers are now, they don't know what they're pointing to. In cases like that, all of a sudden things will just stop working. Number one, close out that session, open up a new session. Number two, if worst comes to worst, deinstall R and then reinstall it. And again, for Mac, and we can't stress this highly enough, you need to be, I'm looking at the CRAN page, OS X 10.11 or better, and you need to have Xquartz. What if I have an old Mac that's like an ancient one? Well, this is a great opportunity to help yourself to a new Macintosh computer. And the new ones are really nice, especially I guess the new Apple MacBook Pro. I've heard many good things about. Yuli, have you tried the new MacBook Pro or seen it?
I do not have it, but I've used it for a little bit. It's similar. It's quicker. It's more CPU.
Excellent. So I'm going to move on to the second question, which ties in with the first. Which programming tool, R or RStudio, is easier to learn and use? Which one do you recommend for answering quiz questions in this course? and for regular use and company environments. So when I hear that question, I think of, I want to learn to ride a motorcycle. Should I start with a beginner bike, or should I go on for like a big race motorcycle? Don't bother putting on a helmet and just race down the street. So no, don't buy a big motorcycle and race it down the street if you're learning how to ride a motorcycle. So for the first time you use R, you just want to have the R console. So the R console is what we show in the class. And the R console is basically a stripped down version of R. It's the most basic, the most genuine, the most authentic, old school version of R. For those of you who are computer programmers, you'll notice that the R console looks a lot like Unix. That is not a coincidence. The people who developed R, Ross and Robert, they were big Unix hackers. So they basically programmed what they knew, which is a Unix environment, which is basically nothing more than a cursor, and then you just start typing stuff in, because that's how people did it with Unix. So use R console. If you have, if the kind of work that you do involves a lot of running the same code over and over and over again, and you see that, oh yeah, I remember this particular sequence of commands and I'm going to use them again, then it's nice to have an editor. For an editor, you can just use Microsoft Word or Apple Pages. I mean, any of those are fine. Better, though, would be to use the R editor. So the R editor ships free with every copy of R console that's out there. To get the R editor, you just go to the left on the menu where it says File, and you click on New Script, and the R editor will pop up. And what the R editor is not magic. It just allows you to type what you think you want to have, to fix any typos that you might have. And then if you push the transfer button, it's a button with a big arrow on it, it'll push the material from the R editor into the R console. Or you can just highlight whatever it is you want to run, and you just click enter, and it'll push it to the R console and run it. The R editor is nice in that it's fully integrated with R, because it's designed to be that way. Another tool that I know people use is Sublime. I'm imagining that's a Sublime.org or something, but Sublime is another editor. It's kind of like R editor, but it's colorful. You know, it has like different colors for the quotation marks and different colors for parentheses. And if you like color, hey, knock yourself out. Sublime is there for you. I do know that Google likes Sublime. Apparently they like a lot of color when it comes to programming. The problem with Sublime is that it's not integrated. So especially for Windows users, you have to actually write stuff in Sublime and then copy everything and paste it manually into R console in order to get it to work. And you know, why would you have an editor if you have to copy and paste everything? There are other choices. There's choices like RStudio, RCommander, lots of different things. Why is that? That's because R's been around a while. R's a great program with great computational speed, but a lot of people don't like the user interface. And so different attempts have been made at different times to give a better user interface like RStudio and RCommander. The problem with RStudio and RCommander is that it can be a little overwhelming. RStudio, for example, has 4 different screens, all showing different things. If you've never programmed before, that can be really overwhelming. Also, when the CRAN, when the Comprehensive R Archive Network, when they do coding, they fix R console first. What does that mean? That means that something will run correctly in R console, but it might not run in RStudio. And big questions I get is, you know, hey, why doesn't this work on RStudio? You know, I would say try it on R console instead. Yuli and Jim, are you finding that as well? Problems with RStudio?
I can't speak for it, unfortunately. I don't use RStudio. At work, I use Mode Analytics for everything, so I can't say. I'm sorry.
All I can say, Stefan, is from what I've seen on the discussion forum, some students have recommended using RStudio. They found it easier to get it, to understand it and to use it for the quiz questions.
And Yulia, have you found that as well?
I've seen that some students, yes, they do prefer RStudio just because it provides more visual. Yeah, it's like easier to see visually what's happening in RStudio. That's why some students prefer it. I still use our console and Mode, but it doesn't really matter what you use as long as you get correct, as long as you get done what needs to get done. It doesn't matter. Everyone prefers their own tools.
So in short, you can use any of those. The official version that's supported in this course is our console, and certainly if you're starting out, recommending using our console. That being said, if you're a seasoned programmer or you just like to watch lots of different things happening at the same time, RStudio is always an option. But in terms of answering the question, which ones do I recommend for the quiz questions and for regular use in company environments? For quiz questions, I do like our console. For regular use in company environments, it depends. Like I said before, I know that Google, for example, they like to use Sublime. Why? I don't know. It's so each company each company's got it's going to have its own programming handbook that gives you ideas and not really regulations but guidelines on how to use programs in their particular facility. And for example, on the Google handbook, it says that you should use Sublime as a text editor. And also, and I'm going to have to ask you guys what you think about this, but at Google, so officially the end of a line of our code should end with a semicolon to designate that that's the end of the line. That being said, I rarely use, the only time I'll actually put a semicolon in is if there's a following on statement that I want to make sure R understands there's actually two statements and not one run-on statement. But other than that, I rarely use a semicolon. At Google, they actually mandate that you don't put a semicolon in. Yulia, do you ever use semicolons?
Not in R, no, because generally if you just hit enter and change to another line, it knows that it's a new statement. So I don't find it necessary. If it works without it, I think it's fine for me. But again, like everyone got different habits. As long as it works.
Absolutely. No, I agree. I agree. And then Jim, if you had to work in R and you could, if you had a long session to do in R and you wanted to go to a remote deserted island or any tropical island for that matter, which one would you pick and why?
That's a difficult question. I really haven't used R too much, but what I would do is I would definitely take a good solid course in R and understand it well. And I think, like you mentioned earlier, if I understand the fundamentals and the basic way of working with R with the console, I think it really helps rather than go to other tools at a higher level. It helps to know my multiplication tables before I use a calculator.
So we're not going to let you get off that easy. So which island, which island do you think? So would you go more for like a Hawaii type kind of boring thing? Would it be like a Fiji? Would it be like the Cook Islands? Which island would be like the best to do an R session with?
My favorite island is definitely my annual pilgrimages to Maui in Hawaii, on
Nice.
Kaanapali Beach.
So when you're in Maui in Hawaii and you've got an excellent R session going on, what's your favorite drink of choice? Does it have an umbrella in it?
Yes, of course, it has an umbrella, definitely, and of course, it's a Mai Tai.
I see. All right, excellent. So we'll move on to number three. Uh, and oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to leave Yulia out. Yulia, which island would you go to, and what would be the drink you'd have during your R session?
I honestly haven't been to many islands. I would go to maybe one of the Hawaii islands as well. I heard Kauai is really beautiful. Drinks of my choice would be I love Moscow mules.
Excellent, excellent. Those are good. Those are good. So you heard it here first. Moscow mules certainly, definitely for conjoint analysis. Speaking of conjoint analysis, please answer question number 3 on the long list of stuff. It's really amazing just how much correlation. If I had like a correlation matrix between exotic islands and conjoint analysis, it's just like a pure diagonal line. It's really amazing. Please explain how to access and run CA Max Utility and CA Importance functions in R on PC and Mac to answer the quiz questions in this course. So let's see. So first, I'm going to take the first part. Please explain how to access and run CA Max Utility and CA Importance. So CA Max Utility and CA Importance are both functions within the conjoint package. Yulia, remind us about the spelling of those functions.
Yes, please remember that R is case sensitive, and I believe CA Max Utility. So the first CA will be lowercase, then Max, the first letter will be uppercase, the rest is lowercase, and utility again, the first letter will be uppercase and the rest is lowercase. And it's extremely important because if you do not follow the exact casing of the function name, the R will not know what function you're referring to, and you will get an error, function not found.
And Yulia brings up a good point. You know, in general, in computer science, the function names and even many of the variable names are almost always, if you have a concatenation or a grouping together of words, the first letter of each word is capitalized. So if you had Yulia Pachkovska, there'd be a capital Y and a capital P, with the exception of the very first letter. In virtually all computer programs, R is certainly an example, but so is Python and all these other ones. One does not generally capitalize the first letter in a function. And R is no exception. That's why on CA Importance and CA Max Utility, the C that would not be capitalized. I'm pretty sure that's true for all R commands, but watch, there's gonna be one R command with a capital letter. But in general, the first letter is always lowercase. So CA Max Utility, because it's 3 words, CA stands for conjoint analysis. CA is lowercase. And then the M in Max is capitalized. The U in utility is capitalized. How do you access it? It's part of the package. So to access it, you would install the conjoint package, and you would do that using the install.packages command, and we talk about that in the lecture. And then you can invoke them, which means I'm going to run them just by telling about those functions. You can run them that way. It should not make a difference on Mac versus PC. Now, many packages, and I believe the conjoint package is included in that, it needs that special functionality that's in Xquartz. So you do want to install and run Xquartz before you run Conjoint. Why is that? There's some, Mac used to include the Xquartz functionality for years and years and years, and then it stripped it out. I don't know why. So you need to put it back in. The good news is that it's free. It's pretty easy. It's, I don't know, 2 minutes. And you only have to do it once. Once Xquartz is installed, you don't need to reinstall it. So that's good. And then if something happens and it won't run, again, we talked about R being corrupted. If it doesn't run in the short term, I would close out that R session, quit it, and then reopen the R session, run it again. So that's question 3. Question 4, more conjoint analytics. And a big question I get is it conjoint or conjoint? Either one are is okay. I think mathematicians generally refer to it as conjoint, but I see, I don't know, Yulia and Jim, what are your take? Conjoint or conjoint? What do you prefer?
I think conjoint, but I don't know.
I think it's conjoint.
Okay, so we have, and this is really typical. This is actually a complete good representation that of the 2 people asked, we got 2 totally different answers, and I think that's actually representative of the universe. That I don't know if there is a quote unquote correct way to do it, but it's certainly there. So, question 4: please explain the methodology and terminology of conjoint analytics, oh goodness, and the steps required to execute conjoint analysis in R, and how to understand and interpret the results of the analysis. Wow. Yulia, how would you answer that question?
So we can list the steps. So number 1, you install your package. Then second step, you call your package by using library command. We have that provided in the slides. If you are looking for exact syntax, it's very simple syntax though. It just library parentheses and name of the package inside of the parentheses. Next, you want to make sure that you read your CSV files into R that you're going to be applying your conjoint analysis for. Syntax for that in the slides as well. You just you give it a name, and then you use command read.csv and parentheses, and you give it the absolute file path name inside the quote marks. And then if your CSV file has column headers, you make sure that R knows that there are headers in your file. And again, the exact syntax for that in the slides. So you can just look it up. We're not going to talk about the syntax. And what else? And then you execute your functions from the package.
And I will say that all that's covered in chapter 7 of the book, Market Analytics. We talk about it really in terms of Microsoft Excel, and that's a good way to learn it. And in the lecture, I believe we also talk about it first with Microsoft Excel, and then we talk about it in terms of R. But it's good to reflect upon what it is we're actually doing. What it is we're actually doing is we want to find out what it is people actually want. This is something that has been so difficult to understand. What do people actually want? And I don't know why. If you ask people what they want, they'll lie to you. I'm still struggling with this. I did have one person say, what's the number one most important thing? and she texted, "I want low prices." And she literally texted this message to me from an iPhone X, the most expensive telephone in the world. Maybe Kim Kardashian has a more expensive telephone with, rubies or something encrusted on it, but to tell me that you like low prices, okay, your behavior does not match at all what you just told me. So I know you must like something else. And I wish you would tell me, because I don't really care. It's not like you're going to embarrass me. I just want, I honest, truly want to give you what you want. I want to give you the product or service of your dreams. So what Conjoint allows us to do is to get past all that. What Conjoint allows us to do is to actually find out what people want based on their choices. It looks at all the choices people make, and from all those choices that people make, it actually figures out what people's priorities are. Do they want luxury? Do they like price? If they had a choice between something high luxury, high price, would they want that? Or low luxury, low price, would they want that? What do people actually have as their priorities? So if you think about it in that context, that can really help. That what it's doing is finding out in priority order what people want. And that's really, if you look at especially the CA importance command, what it's doing is it's saying what's important to people. Is it delivery time? Is it color? And I think Apple, for example, has done a masterful job with that. It's figured out that people want all sorts of things. So they want style, they want color, they want usability, they want apps, so many different things, but in a very sophisticated way. And I can't help but think that there's a whole department at Apple devoted to conjoint or conjoint analysis. So what Yulia said was right. Go through the steps that are in the lecture to actually execute it. And then when it comes time to interpret it, that's really the simulation portion. And in the course, we go over 2 simulations, Max Utility and BTL. Max Utility says you live in a world where you only have one of something. One house, one boyfriend, baby. So probably one house, probably one boyfriend, probably one car, probably one job, and you want to pick the best that you can, the best one that you can. So you're only going to get one of something. What is the one choice that offers the maximum utility, the best house, the best girlfriend, the best car, the best job, the best place to live? Because I'm only going to have one of those. BTL, on your hand, says, no, there's a different world. There's a different world where people have many, many, many things. So you might be serving wine at a party. And Yulia, what kind of wine do you like?
Pinot Noirs.
Pinot Noir. And Jim, how about you?
Cabernet Sauvignon.
Cabernet. See, we have 2 different people with 2 different choices. Yulia, if you were to pick a second wine, what would it be?
Maybe Tempranillo.
Tempranillo. Okay. So in here, in the world of BTL, so 3 people, Bradley, Tash, and Louis, Luce, I think it's Italian, Bradley, Touche, Louis, came up with an algorithm that says there's a world where people have many choices. So if I had a party, I might, even though I like Pinot or I like Cabernet, or heaven help you, you like Rosé. You have a favorite, but you don't have to. You wouldn't serve that hopefully you wouldn't serve that at your party. You wouldn't have just Pinot. Even though you love Pinot, you wouldn't have just Pinot. You would probably serve a few Pinots, a few Caps. You might even have some whites, like a nice chilled, crisp Sauvignon Blanc. You'll have many, many different choices to satisfy the palates of your many guests at your party. Well, how many do I have for each? And that's where BTL comes in. In a world where we have lots of different choices and we want to experience the richness of those choices, BTL tells us in that mixed environment how many of each we can expect will be sold. In other words, if we came up with these products or services, how many would we expect to sell? And in other words, should we actually make that product or service? If we're not going to sell any, we probably shouldn't make it. So again, when you interpret it, you think about the market share, the predicted market share that conjoint analysis says we're going to have. And again, there's two worlds, at least two worlds. There's one world where you only have one of something, that's max utility, and one world where you'll have a mix of something, that's BTL. Cool. Question 5. Please explain high market growth and high relative market share as it relates to the Boston Consulting Group model analysis. How can we determine the cutoff point in the application of the BCG model? Jim, what's your favorite market? Do you have a category that you really like other than exotic tropical islands? Do you like stand-up paddling? Do you like cars? Do you like different things? What's your favorite category or market?
My favorite category would be cars.
Cars, nice. So what would be high market growth for a car?
Well, you have to consider the alternatives that we have for different kind of cars, and then determine which one is most popular and which one is selling most, and do a comparison to decipher which one has the largest market growth.
So again, so the reason why Jim kind of paused there is he's kind of thinking, well, what car, what category? You know, you have small cars, you have mid-sized cars, you have SUVs, you have trucks, you have all these different things. And so a better way to think of this question is not what is high market growth, but the answer is what is high market growth for that category. So for example, right now, rightly or wrongly, in the United States, small cars have, I think it's actually negative. It's actually a negative growth rate. We actually have fewer people wanting small cars year over year over year. The demand for smaller cars is going down. Meanwhile, the demand for light trucks like the Ford F-150 and SUVs like the Chevrolet Suburban or the Ford Navigator, demand is very strong. So if we had numbers, I think the last time I saw market results for small cars, the growth was negative 5%, meaning it's negative. And for light trucks and SUVs was between plus 15 and plus 22%, depending on which report you look at. So so the high market growth for a small car would be zero. If we can get to zero, that's amazing. If we can get to zero for a small car, we're doing good for high market growth. But the demands would be much higher for trucks and SUVs. So one of the nice things we like to do is to say, hey, let's look at the industry overall and let's make an average. So look at all the different categories. We make an average and let's say it's plus 5%. Then we know anything above that average is going to be relatively high. Anything below that average is going to be relatively low. Recently, Ford announced that it's going to stop making its traditional sedan automobiles, which I find shocking. Ford, the company, pretty much invented that category of sedans. They're going to stop making it, with the exception of one car. They're going to make one car, the Ford Mustang. Other than that, they're not going to make any more cars. It's all going to be trucks, SUVs, and specialty vehicles. So a specialty vehicle is like a Ford Fusion hybrid, or maybe I think they're talking about a gas powered, not a gasoline powered one, but like um, not fusion. I forget what it is. Anyway, so specialty vehicles, that's all they're going to be focusing on because the category growth and the other categories is so bad. So bad. What is high relative market share? That's an easier question to answer, and that's anything over 1. So typically we'll look at our principal competitor and we'll compare it to ourselves. So if we're, I don't know, what's your favorite brand, Jim? Car brand.
Lexus.
Lexus. So for Lexus, who are we comparing ourselves against? That's actually a good question. Who are you comparing yourself against? And then I want to get Yulia's take on what she compares against.
You could compare it to Infiniti, for example.
Mm-hmm. And then Yulia, what would you compare it against?
Yeah, well, since they position themselves as a luxury car make or sort of luxury car make, you would compare it to similar brands, maybe like Mercedes or BMW and Infiniti as well.
Interesting. So when Elon Musk introduced the Model 3 Tesla, he actually said, we are positioning against Mercedes. We are positioning ourselves against lower tier luxury cars. He made it very, very, very clear about who they're positioning against. So when we talk about relative market share, someone in Lexus or Toyota right now is probably saying, how does our market share compare against that of Nissan, against that of Mercedes, against that of BMW? At least maybe perhaps the lower lines of each of those respective. So that's relative market share. So relative market share is in your category. And then how can we determine the cutoff point in the application of the BCG model? Typically, I would advocate the average. So meaning if we can't even get to the average growth of what's happening, then we have to figure out what's gone wrong. And a great example of that is the Honda Element. I don't know what happened. Yuli, have you ever seen a Honda Element?
Yes, I have.
And what are your...
I wouldn't buy one just because of the design of the car.
Right.
Maybe that's why it went down.
So when I speak to Honda Element owners, they love the car, and it was positioned perfectly. It was a unique design that fulfilled the needs of a very specific market segment, arguably like no other car before it. And yet we had a lot of people like Yulia who just said, it's just too weird. I just don't like it. Have you ever sat inside a Honda Element, Yulia?
I have not, no.
So the inside is basically all plastic. The idea was that you would go to the beach, you would go surfing, you would come back, you would drive home, the car would be full of sand, and you would go out and get a garden hose and hose it down, literally hose down the interior. So as you can imagine, there's no leather, there's no cloth, it's all plastic. And so let's face it, your butt sticks to the seats, right, on a hot day, which turned off a lot of people. It was great for surfers and other adventure sport enthusiasts, but yeah, they failed to capture the Yulias in the market. How about you, Jim? What's your opinions on the Honda Element?
I'm sorry, I haven't seen one, and I haven't ridden in one.
So,
I really don't know.
So on the Honda Element, it was basically a four-door. I don't know. How would you describe it, Yulia? Well, how would you describe the category?
It is definitely an SUV, but it's very boxy SUV, if that makes sense. I mean, it's probably a mid-size SUV, or maybe an off-roader.
Yeah, I would say it was an SUV in the most pure tradition of the SUV, in that it was, in fact, an adventure. Maybe I would call it an ASUV, an adventure sports utility vehicle. And it's a classic case of the question mark. here we have a vehicle that's perfectly positioned for their particular category, and yet we cannot get the growth that that category demands. And what went wrong? Is it, to Yulia's point, is it just the styling? Did we do a bad job introducing it? Is the whole notion of the interior, was that the problem? Was it a problem with the size? Was it a problem with the weight? We just, on paper, it should have won. On paper, this should be perfect. On paper, this should be like the world's most perfect vehicle. It should fly off the shelf. And yet we just can't seem to sell it. What went wrong? And that's your classic question mark, where we have something, it should sell, and it's just not. And I think Honda actually, I know Honda eventually ended up killing it. They just said, okay, you had your shot, you couldn't get it done, off you go. You compare that to maybe a superstar like the Apple iPhone, where fantastic revenue, fantastic gross margin, fantastic growth, just a terrific product. And then finally a dog, and sorry, Yulia, but the Apple TV, they're in, I don't know what, fifth iteration, they're in 5.0, and they still can't. In a world where you have Netflix and Roku, to have a product as bad as Apple TV, that's pretty bad. So, and the BCG model says, you should kill the dogs and invest those assets into the stars. All right, one more question, and I think we're running out of time, so we'll handle one more question, and that's the channel evaluation criteria. So the channel evaluation criteria has all to do with distribution channels. And then Yulia and Jim, where do you like to shop and why? And this could be a physical store or it could be an online store, but where do you like to shop and why?
I shop a lot at Costco because it's club and it's cheaper than other stores. And what I can't get at Costco, I usually shop online, like Amazon.
My favorite shopping site would be Amazon.com, because it's, first of all, I don't have to go anywhere. I can just see all the choices I have. I can make comparisons, and price is usually very competitive. And if you're a Prime member, the shipping is in 2 days and it's free. I mean, it's convenience of shopping is what I go for, and the price is definitely competitive.
Talk a little bit about the support, the customer support for each of those. What's a customer support like at Amazon?
I think it's very good. For example, I get a immediate email confirmation of my order, and they even track the order. They have links to see when the order will be shipped, on its way, and when it will be delivered. And if there's any question at all about returning, there's a very simple return policy, and there's very little hassle. And there's customer service response is very quick and very reliable.
And then Yulia, same question, but for Costco.
I also think their customer service is really good. It's easy to buy things and easy to return things. The only inconvenience I would say that is there are huge lines on the weekends.
Good point. So when we look at the channel evaluation, we look at it in 3 ways, actually 4 ways. So first, we look at the amount of money we're going to make by opening up a particular store. And that's why I stumbled when I said 3 or 4. Obviously, you're going to look at the money. But beyond just the money, it's important to look at 3 attribute classes. The first one is customer acquisition. So to get people to that store in the first place. And there's customer retention, and that's to get people to keep coming to the store. And then this revenue growth, and that's to get people to buy more. So, Yulia, why did you join Costco? What made Costco appealing?
Prices.
So prices was good, but what kept you coming back?
Gas prices.
So
It's cheaper than any other gas station by almost $1
and then when
per
you buy
gallon.
gas,
That's a lot.
when you buy gas at Costco, do you go inside the store or do you always just buy the gas and then just go home?
Well, sometimes I go inside the store. Yeah, I mean, I kept my membership because prices are very appealing at Costco.
And then when you go inside the store, do you end up buying things that you did not originally intend to buy?
Oh, yes, absolutely. You see sales and you see something like that you were thinking about a while ago, and now it just came up on the shelf.
So for those of you who are watching this broadcast, whenever you have a question about what the customer channel evaluation model is, just rewind what Yuli just said and played it back. That's exactly what the model is about. Number one, customer acquisition. I found the quality to price ratio compelling. Customer retention, they keep offering me things in a very consistent way. I want to keep coming back. Customer revenue growth is exactly what me as a merchant wants to see. I came in for X and I ended up with, oh my God, how big are the shopping carts at Costco? I mean,
Huge.
and could you actually fit in a, a Honda Element inside that shopping cart? I think you could. I'm pretty sure. Well, maybe on its side, fit the Honda Element, but you could, right? And I've seen people, and maybe you guys have seen this. Have you seen the trains of carts? Meaning, people have multiple carts. Have you seen that at the store, Yulia?
Yes. Well, not a lot, but like two or three. But yeah.
So three carts the size of Honda Elements, full, and one cart is just toilet paper. I don't know how they wrap that toilet paper. It's ginormous. So that's customer revenue growth. So the idea is once you get someone in the store, whether it's online or in a physical store, we want people to buy lots of stuff because one of our steepest costs is CAC or CAC, the customer acquisition cost. To get those people in the store is hard. Once we have them in the store, we want to make the most of it. And that's why we have merchandising where people come in and they say, hey, here's a sofa. I can't believe they have sofas at Costco. And you weren't thinking about buying a sofa. This is a nice sofa, or this is a nice flat screen TV, or this is a nice gigantic bottle of pretzels or nuts or something. And we want that. We want that additional revenue. So what the customer channel, what the distribution channel evaluation model does is it looks at all those three attribute categories, breaks them down into individual measurables, and then assesses how well different retail or online choices do against each of those measurable categories. And then we give a score to everything. And according to Yulia, Costco, scale of 1 to 5, Costco gets A.
A, yes, absolutely.
So Costco does well in every category, and I think Costco is one of the retail success stories where they are thriving. I would say thriving. I'm going to go ahead and use the word thrive in a world where I think there's what I'm going to be joking now. Sears, there's like one store closing per day. It seems like it that way. In a world where there's one store closing per day, the lines at Costco are crazy. On the weekends, I'm almost afraid to go in the store. That's how successful they become. So the channel evaluation model says, besides just an anecdotal reference like that, how do we actually quantify the assessment of all these different channel options so that we can go to market with the most relevant retail store, whether it be online or a physical store, that we can to engage the kind of customer we have. Yulia and Jim, any parting thoughts before we leave for today?
Just wanted to summarize our talk maybe by for a little bit. So remember, install Quartz prior to installing the packages. Remember that R is case sensitive. Please refer to the slides for syntax, and you'll do great.
And then Jim, any parting thoughts?
I just hope that the students have found the course useful. It's certainly very convenient to take this course online and is essentially free. And hopefully they've learned some new techniques related to marketing analytics. And I hope they all do well in the course and will come back for future courses when they're offered. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thanks, Jim. And then Yulia, one last thing. What's the nicest comment you've seen in the course? The nicest comment?
Oh, you should have asked me that ahead of time. I don't know.
Well, just what's your recollection?
There were nice comments.
A nice comment.
People thank us when we answer questions. Yes, or sometimes I've seen posts where people say that they're like, oh, I'm actually gonna test this on my business and I'm gonna see how it works, which is very rewarding when you know that it's useful to someone.
That's perfect. And just before we close out for today, we want to thank again those students who are acting as leaders. We see that from time to time where one student is helping a whole bunch of other students answering a question. And again, we all do our best to respond to student questions as rapidly as possible. And we really appreciate your stepping up and using the forums as they were intended so that one student can help out another student. Not only do you get your questions answered faster that way, but also there's a lot of knowledge. I mean, I have knowledge, Julie has knowledge, Jim has knowledge. We all have knowledge, but we can't possibly have as much knowledge as all of you collectively. So we definitely encourage you to continue to answer one another's questions, to discuss them, and to see how it's relevant in your own life. For edX, this has been Stefan, Yuli, and Jim for the Marketing Analytics MicroMasters. We thank you again for engaging in the course, and we wish you great studying. Thanks again.